Morning. Happy birthday. Next Sunday. The Shabbos is the birthday. When you were born, the whole world. Really? Wow. Wow. That's where you get your happiness from. Wow, amazing. Good morning, Yeshikayach Barakata, Adonai Aleinu Melech Haolam, Sha'achel Niya B'dvareh. Good morning. Okay. Mazel Tov. Sheva Brachas, yeah? Ah? Oh, wow. It's going to be Hatzlacha. Okay. Beautiful. Asach Nachas. Larichis Yama V'Shalom Vayivez. From Ben Shmoyne Esrei zal gaan bis Ben Meir v'chuli. You took down the Maimonim, yeah? Okay. Everything good? We're working? Sarbit. Okay, good morning everybody. Welcome. Baruchim Habayim. We're up to, I think, Seif Daled. In the Maimer Vayivez Be'einav. L'shloyach yad b'mardach elavadai. Seif Daled. Here in this page 131. Say then. Okay. Okay, today's class is dedicated Le'elu Nishmas, Le'zecher Nishmas, Shnei Yitzchak, Ben Pinchas, and Ben Esther. A man of unwavering emunah, bitachon, humility, selfless devotion. Served in the army to protect his people and his land. His life was a testament to kindness, Torah, Tefillah, good deeds, Ma'asim Tovim, and Mesiras Nefesh for the Jewish people, inspiring all those who knew him to live with purpose, integrity, and unshakable commitment to truth, to Hashem. Tehei Nishmas Tzrura B'Tzrur HaChaim. And may his memory be a source of light and inspiration to the entire family and to all of the Jewish people. I also want to dedicate it to a dear friend who's having a surgery today, Rabbi Yosef Shloima ben Risha, for a refuah shleima and a refuah krova, la'arichis yamim v'shanim tovos, and that the surgery should go with flying colors and with a lot of hatzlacha. B'tov ha'nirav ha'nigla. Okay, so let's continue weiter, Seif Daled. The whole nekuda here was that we were learning about the encounter between the divine soul, the nefesh halakis, and the animal soul, the nefesh habahamis, as really two worlds, toyu and tikkun, or tikkun and toyu. And the reason that the nefesh halakis needs to come down into the nefesh habahamis and the guf and the physical world is because of the sparks of toyu that have fallen here, that are really very, very lofty and sublime. And through this encounter, the nefesh halakis elevates the nefesh habahamis, but is also elevated in the process through tayu. And that's what he began to explain in Sif Gimel, that there's a difference between daimim tzamei chai and medaber, things that have choice and things that don't have choice. When you're dealing with a piece of food, or you're dealing with a physical reality in the world, or you're dealing with a medaber, with a person who has choice. And here there could be a difference, as he says, in the case of Shlomo HaMelech, where Malkas Shva, the queen of Shva, and so many other great sages, the Tanakh says, were drawn to Shlomo. And essentially, spiritually, what that means is that something woke up in them, something triggered their nitzutz of Tohu to be able to come back to its source. And they felt that Shlomo HaMelech was the place, that was the address. And that's indeed what happened. In other words, this came from their will, because they have Bechira, and this came from their will. However, he says, sometimes this medaber, this person, chooses the opposite. And then, as he put it, it's not so simple to just defeat him. And the reason is because there's something in Toyu here. And even someone who comes from Tikkun and a Tzaddik, because there's a spark here, you may think his intensity or his strength is coming from his lowliness, his negativity. The truth is it's being fueled, it's being fed by something that's very, very deep. And therefore, Tikkun has a certain derech, there's a certain reservation how much it can defeat Toyu because of its great spark. And that's what Eov says. Hashem tells Eov that Im Zroya Kelach, if your arm is really God's arm, so then Hidoich Rishayim Tachtam. Right? Tamneim Ba'afra, we learned this. V'gam Aniyei Deka. Then the sign is that this type of toughness of the Rishayim, the wickedness that you'll be able to crush, this is a sign that this Hashem can do. Because as he says, even a tzaddik comes from tikkun, and these Rishayim are from Olam HaTayu. Esav is the b'chair, and because of that, he tells Eov, this is not your fault. This is not your fault, and therefore, as we spoke at length in last year, and therefore you won't be able to handle this on your own. This is above you because there's elements of Toyu here. And even though this person has fallen down so low, and the tzaddik is much higher, that's true, in a conscious way. But there's something being fed, it's being fueled by a very deep source in an unconscious way, even though that source is camouflaged, because Toyu in its source is divine, and here it's completely camouflaged as the opposite. And that's the secret. The Medrash says that Haman told Mordechai, he sent a message to Mordechai, your grandfather. Bow down to my grandfather, you could bow down to me. Yaakov bowed down to Esav, and you could bow down to me. The truth is, the Medrash continues over there, that Mordechai left back a message and said that my grandfather is actually Binyamin. Mordechai came from Binyamin, Ish Yemini. Ish Yehudi Haya Mordechai, Ish Yehudi Mordechai ben Yair ben Shimi ben Kish, Ish Yemini. Yemini is Binyamin, Ben Yamin. Yeah. Rachel called her Ben Oini, Rachel called him Ben Oini, Yaakov called him Ben Yamin. Binyamin. Yeah. Strength, yeah. So, was born in Eretz Yisrael. So Yaakov said Binyamin didn't bow down to Esav, because when they met Esav, everybody bowed down, but Binyamin wasn't born yet. So Mordechai said, if you want to actually be correct, it's fake news, you got the wrong Jew, right? That's what the Medrash says. Mordechai sent back a message. So you understand how much Haman liked that one. Like Haman said, it's a tradition. Everybody bows down to me. Yaakov bowed down to me. All his children bow down to me. He says, that's true. It says everybody, Ishtachavu, everybody, Rachel and Leah and Bilhah and Zilpah and all the boys. Binyamin wasn't born yet. Binyamin is born later in Vayishlach, after the meeting with Esav. So Mordechai actually says, I'm following the tradition of my father. He never bowed down to you. He wasn't born yet. Right? But what was Haman's taina? So on a deeper level, Haman's taina was, Esav is the b'char, Toyu comes before Tikkun. But the way Esav is down here, the way Haman is down here, obviously is a Rasha Merusha. Mordechai says, Lo yichrev v'lo yishtachava. But that's the cheshbon, that they're feeding off something very powerful. That's why Hashem tells Eov, this is something beyond you. This is not something you can contend with. This is a sign that your God himself, Hashem himself, can deal with this, because he created Toyu and he created Tikkun. That was the main nekud. So now he goes weiter in the sinyan. Explain this more. That the sug ha-medaber, meaning the category of medaber. You have doimim, you have tzemech, you have chai. They don't have bchira, they're following a program. So here it's about you. It's how much you're ready to deal with your stuff in order to be mavara them. Instead of falling prey, you can sublimate them. But when we're talking about a sug ha-medaber, medaber means a speaking person, a human being. And here there's bchira, and it comes from Toyu. It can't just be sublimated if it doesn't want to, through the avoid of the Jewish people. That's what Hashem told Eov. Don't take responsibility for this. This is my thing. There's something here you have to realize is very, very powerful. He says this is all true. This is not coming from the Rasha himself that he has some power. It's when he down here is still nurtured. He's still feeding off those oiris takifim. Takifim means the intense light, and the oiris merubim, the powerful light of Olam HaToyu. Like it says in Kabbalah always that in Tikkun, the vessels are large and the lights are small, the energy is small. In Toyu, the vessels are small and the energy is very, very intense. That's why there was a Shvira Sakelim. It wasn't integrated. So when this person is feeding off the Oiris Takifim, that intense energy of Toyu, that's when even the tzaddik on his own can't break it. Hashem has to do it. What does this mean? Because the stubbornness and the strength is feeding off something that's really, really very powerful, even though by the Rasha it's completely not integrated. That's why he's a Rasha, he's not a tzaddik. But that's how it plays itself out down here, that he's feeding off this intense energy. Once these lights leave them, they exit them, they lose touch with them. Then they're just back to what they are on their own. And then, of course, good can defeat them. Tzaddikim can subdue them, can crush them. Because really you can ask, what does it mean? We spoke before, Hashem told Eiv that even tzaddikim can't break the Rasha, only Hashem can do it. You see in the Torah stories and events with the tzaddikim through their own prayers subdue the Rishayim. Inyan who the pshat is sheyesh chilik im Hashem mesachekes lo ein Hashem mesachekes lo k'deisa b'gemara im re'is Rasha Hashem mesachekes lo al tizgara b'ay hainu sheb'matzav kazeh lo yuchaleh. There's a difference. The Gemara says in Brachas, Daf Zayin, it's a whole sugi in Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan, it says in the name of Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, that you don't have to be afraid to provoke a Rasha. You could crush him, you could fight him. So the Gemara brings a contradiction. Rabbi Yitzchak said, Altis Gara Barasha, you shouldn't provoke him. So the Gemara brings three answers. One is if it's a tzaddik gomer or not a tzaddik gomer, depends what type of tzaddik you are. In other words, how much you're really not affected by him, how pure you are. Another answer is if it's in matters of the world, b'milah da'alma, b'milah da'shmaya, or matters of heaven, Torah, and mitzvahs. But the third answer is, or actually the middle answer is, ha b'rasha shasham mesachekes lei, ha b'rasha she'ein hasham mesachekes lei. Sham mesachekes lei literally means the hour is smiling at him. The hour is, it's an interesting, the hour in mesachekes, it's smiling at him. In other words, he's in a place where life is smiling at him. Sometimes you have a situation in life, it's a gate gut, as they say. Life is amazing. You know, he's on top of the world. So the Gemara makes that difference. If Sham is Achekes Loi, then stay away. If Eina Sham is Achekes Loi, right, then you can go, then go at it. What's the Havana here? What's the Havana? Huh? Yeah, a miserable Rasha, yeah.
He's connected to Toyu or not?
Oh, so that's the Vart. If the Toyu, Sham is Achekes Loi, spiritually means that Toyu is smiling at him. He's feeding off something. And then you have to be careful. That's what the Gemara says. That's what he's saying here. That's the difference. Al derech zek sivitz, for example, it says in Parshas Lech Lech, Hashem tells Avram, only the fourth generation, he speaks about your children going into exile. Right. But then he says, the fourth generation will come back here to Eretz Yisrael after exile. Why? Because the sin of the Amori loy shalim, it's not full, it's not complete till that point. What's the connection? Calls man hainu shebnei yichem lekanis v'lichbur said it's amazing. Calls man shlein is smala sa'asam. Rashi says over there, as long as there's sa'ah is a measurement, has not been filled, so they can't come back to Eretz Yisrael. So what is he saying here? That there's a certain point that the Amori, it implodes. Already there's nothing there. You go back in. But till that moment comes, you can't go back there to Yisrael because the Almighty is there. What's the Havana here? V'hainu. Shekol's mancha sug ha'medaber shabaylam haz hu ma'im edamatzu sheyesh be'eris tekifim detayu eni yachal is bared al der tikun shalamatim emenu b'madrega. As long as this category in this world, the category of Medaber, who has Bchira, is in a state where the Oiris Takifim, the intense, ferocious, powerful energy of Toyu, is manifested in him, so then Tikkun, which is lower on a certain, which is lower in spiritual levels, cannot elevate it, cannot sublimate, and therefore can't defeat it. This explains what it says in Zohar in Parshas Boy. Moshe Rabbeinu nisyara mipnei parei hatanin hagadol harovetz b'toich ha'orev ad shamalei HaKadosh Baruch Hu atzivu boyel parei da'ayalei kutchabrichu idrin basar idrin. It says in the Zohar, the pasuk boyel parei, come to parei. So the Zohar says it should have said leichel parei, go to parei. When you send somebody on a mission, you tell them go to this and this person. You don't say come to this and this person. Hashem wasn't asking Moshe to come to him; he was asking him to go to parei, leichel parei. And previously in Chumash, he says leichel parei. Here suddenly he says, Boyal Pare, come to Pare. So the Zohar says that at this point Moshe was this is what the Zohar says, was overwhelmed by fear. Dachil, he was terrified. Because all the other times he met Pare on the outside. He met him at the river. He met him not in his own chamber. But this time Hashem was telling him, go into Pare's innermost sanctuary. Idrin lefnime, Idrin chede lefnime chede, into his mamash, his intimate space. So Moshe was afraid. So Hashem said, boy, come. I'm coming with you. Don't worry. Just hold my hand. We're going together. You're just, I'm coming with you. What happened here? What was the fear of Moshe Rabbeinu here? So he says the word is v'hainu shekashe pari haye b'mayim dematzav shehayu b'ha'odes takifim detoyu shekadam l'tikun nisyarei Moshe miponov v'lo yachaloi kiyem aydei koiche shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu levad. This is the nekuda we spoke, that Hashem told Eov, this is something that you don't take credit for this. Don't blame yourself and don't take credit for this. You're not the source of the problem and therefore you're not the source of the solution. This is something very, very big. So even Moshe Rabbeinu himself, and we don't have to explain Moshe Rabbeinu's greatness, he felt that there's going to be a certain energy of Pare, even though in this world you can't compare Moshe to Pare. Moshe is the epitome of Kedusha. And Pare was the epitome of klipa and hatred and venom. And how did the two compete? But still there was an intense oil of Toyu that fell through Shvira and was feeding Pare. And that's what Moshe had a reverence, he had a fear from that Nekuda. And Hashem had to tell him, you're right. He won't be able to accomplish what he needs to accomplish. He won't be able to accomplish it. And therefore Hashem Taka says, you're right, Boyal Pare, I'm doing this. I'm coming with you. Or you're coming with me. Boy, come. We're coming together.
Why did Tzach you are able to?
Because Daimim Tzemei Chai doesn't have the Bchira. So it's all about the person's attitude. But the Medaber, right, can use the Toyu in a way that he chooses not to. Like he said, Medaber can sometimes choose to come to the Bir, like Bashleim HaMelech. Or choose the opposite. Because there's an inyan of Bchira there. Mashenkin and Daimim Tzemei Chai, it's just following the program. So it's made for the person to be at Mevada, but Medaber already depends on the Bchira. So Moshe had to understand that. In other words, there's an element of Para. We sometimes think we have control over every situation. You don't. Like that's what he was telling Eov. There's a certain situation where you have to realize you're not God. This person has Bechira, they have to be ready, and it takes a lot of humility and surrender to be able to go there. I could show up to the best of my ability. In many situations in life, you could show up to the best of your ability, but ultimately, as they say, in God's time, they're going to be ready. Like, what does it mean in God's time they're going to be ready? I can't manipulate that. I can't control it. And if you're dealing with Toyu, there's a real powerful energy, and when it's corrupted and distorted, they're feeding off something very, very intense, and they have to be ready. They have to choose it. And if they're not choosing to come, so then Moshe Rabbeinu says, are we ready for this? Can we take the son? This is what Hashem tells Eov. Back to the previous pasuk, Eov chapter 40. If your arm is like God, if you have God's arm, then hidoich rishayim tachten. Then crush the rishayim under themselves. In other words, put them under themselves. Tomneim ba'afar. So it's an interesting lashon. He doesn't just say destroy them. Hidoich rishayim tachteim. Tomneim ba'afar. Hide them in the earth, in the soil. Shekadei sheyuchali is hidoich rishayim tachtam hainu. Shebeshah sharishayim heim badayim b'toikef ha'metzias shalem. Hine ba'ametzias shalahem tachtam yahidach miloshin ketisha. Because of Tomnim Ba'afar Hanosh Kafishem b'Mitziyosum. You Tmunim Ba'afar v'Yispadlu b'Mitziyas. Hadei Zerak Achili Zerakim Zeraya Kakelach b'Koichish LaKadosh Baruch Hu Levada. To take the Rasha when he's in his Mitziyas, when he loses his Mitziyas already, his Mitziyas is not strong. The Oiris of Toyu have gone away. Then the defeat can come in a different way as also. But when he's still in the Toikaf HaMetzias Shaloi, in other words, that's what he says, Hider Chushayim Tachtem. Tachtem, they're still in their Metzias, and they're going to be crushed in that Metzias. In other words, you're taking them on as they are in their full intensity and ferocious might and strength. Tomnim Ba'afar. Tomnim Ba'afar means you don't get rid of them, but you put them under the sand. So in other words, when they are still in their Metzias, in their full might and strength, you'll be able to crush them. This can't come from the tzaddik himself. Why? Because he's from Olam HaTikun, and they're feeding off Olam HaTayu. This comes from Hashem himself. Zroya Kakel. Gam Yochad. Since he transcends Toyu and Tikun, transcends the whole system. As he says in the brackets, even though the source of Olam HaTayu is so lofty. In Kabbalah it says, it comes from the name Yud Kei, of the name of Hashem Sag. Samach Gimel will explain them all. Mikol Makayim, Legabe Ein Seif Baruch Hu Gam Hashem Yud Kei Atzmi Rak B'chinas Shem V'Ada Ba'al. Legabe Hashem himself, the Ein Seif, even Yud Kei is a name. It's a ray, it's a dimension, it's amazing. So Legabe Tikkun, it's Taka, wow. There's something so powerful, but Hashem himself is beyond that. He can cut down the Rishayim when they are in their full strength with the energy that they have from Tayu. And that's what he was telling Eev. This is the sign. He mentions it that it's Yud Kei de Sag. This is a teaching, as he says in 30, from Emek HaMelech. Basically, we mentioned in the first, I think it was the first year, the second year, in Kabbalah, Hashem's name, there's 4 names of Hashem: Ma, and Ban, and Sag, and Av. Ma is 45, Ban is 52, Sag is 63, mentioned here, and Av is 72. Ma is the gematria of Adam. Aleph, Daled, Mem is 45. Ban is the gematria of Behemah. Behemah is Beis Hey is 7, and Mem Hey is 45. So 45 plus 7 is 52. So it's Ma Mem Hey plus another 7, which is Beis Hey, Behemah, and that makes Behemah from Adam Behemah. That's Ban. And then you have 63 Sag, which is the source of Olam HaTayu. That's what he says here. And then you have Av 72, which is beyond all of them. Why do you have these numbers? Because the way you spell it, Hashem's name, could be 4 ways. When you do it with Alephs, everything Alephs, it's 45. Yud is always the same, Yud Vav Dalet. But how do you spell the other letters? You could write out Hey, Hey, how do you spell Hey? It could be Hey Aleph, Vav Aleph Vav, Vav Aleph Vav, Hey Aleph, it'll end up 45. It's a 45. Yud is 20, Yud is 10, and Vav and Dalet is another, Vav is 6 and Dalet is 4, so it's another 10. So Yud itself is 20. And then you have Hey Aleph is going to be Yud Hey. Hey Aleph is another 6, so you have 26. Right? Then you'll have Vav, Aleph and Vav is going to be another 13. Is going to be another 13 because Vav and Vav is 12 and Aleph. So from 26 you're going to have 37. I'm sorry, 39. And then you have Hey Aleph, which is the last 6. So from 39 you get 45. That's how Ma works. How do you get now from Ma to Ban? To Ban, the next one. So here you have to change it. It's not B'mili Alphin, it's B'mili Heyin. Because from Ma to Ban, right, is an extra 7. So instead of Hey Aleph, you have, Yud is the same, but instead of Hey Aleph, you have Hey Hey. So Hey Hey is 10. So Yud is 20. Hey Hey is 10, so that's 30. And then you do Vav Vav. Vav spelled just Vav Vav. So it's another 12. so it's 42, right? And then you have Hey is another 10, so it's 52, Ban. And generally, that's the difference of Nefesh Elikis and Nefesh Bahamas. Adam Behema. The Nefesh Elikis is Ma, that's what he said before, the Neshamas come from Ma. The Nefesh Bahamas comes from Ban, it's also Malchus, it comes down, that's Shem Ban. Then you have the source. The source is Sag and Av. Yeah. To get the Sag, so you have Milu Yudin, not Milu Heyin, but Milu Yudin. So you have Hey, you can write Hey Aleph, you can write Hey, you can write Hey Yud. It's all good spellings. Hey. How do you write it? Hey Aleph, Hey Yud. So in Shem Ma it's Aleph. In Shem Ban it's Hey. And the next two names, it gets Milu Yudin. Huh? It sounds complicated. It's not so complicated. It's just the way you write other names. Huh? Yeah.
So when do you write Hey Aleph, Hey Ep, depending on?
So it depends on that. Yeah. So when you say it's not when you write it. In other words, it's 4 ways in which the energy of Yud Kei Vav Kei is manifested in reality. It's 4 different ways. So in Kabbalah they'll always say Shema, Shem Sag, Shem Ban, Shem Av, and the Kisvi Arizal is always. So it's basically different formations of how Shem Havaya comes out. Yeah. The highest is 72, Av. Yeah. Because what happens is like this. You have Yud is 20, and then Hey Yud is another 15, right? Yud and Hey. So you have 35. And then Vav Aleph Vav, that's going to be an Av. In Av, it changes, the Vav changes. Okay. But in Sag, Vav Aleph Vav, so what do you have? You have 20, and then you have 35, because another 15. And then you have Vav Aleph Vav is 13, so it's 45, so it's 46, 47, 48, right? And then you have another 15, so it's 58 and 63. That's Sag. Yud Vav Daled. How do you spell Yud? How do you spell out Yud? Remember, you're spelling out the letters fully. When we say Yud, listen to what you're saying. You're not saying Ya, you're saying Yud. What you just say, Yud, Vav, Daled. When we write it, we just write a Yud. But when you say it, you say Yud. Right? You don't say Ah, you say Aleph. Aleph, Lamed, Fei. Beis. You don't say Ba, you say Beis. That's called the Milui, the filling, the letter filled out. So all these names are when Yud Kei Vav Kei is filled, it's full. In other words, you have the full letter, not just the letter itself. The letter itself is Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey, which is 26. But once you do it fully, you have these 4 names. So if you do, so again, let me just summarize. So Ma is Yud Vav Daled, Hey Aleph, Vav Aleph Vav, Hey Aleph. Done, 45. You could trust me. Ban is Yud Vav Daled, Hey, Vav Vav, Hey. That's 52. Sag, Hey becomes Yud. The Heys are fillers with Yud. So it's Yud Vav Daled, Hey Yud, Vav Aleph Vav, Hey Yud is 63. How do you get 72? You do the same thing, but the Vav you change. From the Vav Aleph Vav, you make Vav Yud Vav. Av is only Yuds. Only Yuds. Vav Yud Vav. You understand? So from 63, you get an extra 9, which is 72. So Av is Yud Vav Daled, Hey Yud, Vav Yud Vav, Vav, and the last one is Hey Yud, and that's 72. So that means the difference between Sag and Av is if the Vav has Vav Aleph Vav or Vav Yud Vav. Av is all Yuds. Wherever you can put in a Yud, you put in a Yud. And Sag is almost all Yuds, but not. So generally, Ma and Ban is Nefesh Elikis, Nefesh Bahamas. Yeah. Sag is the source of Olam HaToyu. That's why it's called Sag, which is gas. Kuloi Sag Yachdav. Sag means sediments, dirt. It's also gas, arrogance. It's in its source, it's Hashem Malach Geus. It's the power of Toyu, which is gas, it's Sag. So that's what Emek HaMelech says, even though it comes from Yud Kei of Sag, which is so much higher than Ma, you can't even compare, right? You see, Ma is the lowest number, and even though that's Adam, that's the Neshama, because the way it comes down, it doesn't have all that intense energy, because it's integrated, it comes with Kalim. Kedusha comes always with Kalim. Toyu is without Kalim, it doesn't need Kalim, so it can afford to be uninhibited. Can afford to be a bohemian, unfiltered, chaotic guy because it's a lebedik. It doesn't have to be integrated. So that's what he says. Even though it comes from Yud Kei of Sag, but Lagabe Ein Soif, Yud K is also a shame. So mainly he could defeat the Russia even with the intensity of Tayu. So this is a situation where Hashem tells Moshe, Boy para. Or he tells Avram Avinu, you can't yet go back to the Almighty. It's Hashem Mesachekes Loi. Hashem Mesachekes Loi, you have to understand the situation. It's not your fault, and it's not your problem, and it's not you to deal with. You cannot deal with this now. Right? In certain situations, you have to be able to go inward. Like not every situation can you attack, and like sometimes, there was, they say about one of the generals, he was in the middle of a war, and he was very, very aggressive and powerful, and he told his generals to retreat. They said, you retreat? So I'm not retreating, I'm advancing in the opposite direction. He didn't want to call it retreat. Yeah. But it's not a bad word. In other words, not every time you move back is it bad. Sometimes you're advancing in the opposite direction. Yeah. And sometimes there's a situation like it's not for you to deal with. Atkan, and then this is going to be in God's time. Now you have to go inward. You have to go inward to be able to protect your boundaries. It's a very sensitive thing. Right? Moshe Rabbeinu said, now I can't go to Pare now. I'm not afraid. I can't, it's not going to be successful. So he says, you're right. This you need me directly. You're right. And that's what he was telling Eiv. As I said last time, Eiv was taking on all the pain of the world, so to speak. And he said there's certain things that it's not in your time, it's beyond you. That the Rasha, in his Taikaf HaMetzias, in his full intensity, should be able to be in his battle. This, you need something that comes higher than Tayu. That's not you. You on your own, in other words, not you as a channel.
Good Rasha.
Yeah. This is all when the Tayu is shining. It's manifested in the Rasha, even if it's subconscious, because he doesn't know what it is. But the hour is smiling at him. Segate, this power. But at some point it doesn't last forever. So when their sa'ah gets filled, in other words, atkan, there's a point that the cup gets filled, and that's it. Then the tzaddik can subdue them. There's the famous metaphor of an aluka. You know what an aluka is? In Yiddish it's called a piafke. A leech, a bloodsucker. Yeah, it's from the family. There's probably, hundreds and hundreds of types. It was used as a medical. It's called usually a leech. Bankus, yeah, to suck out blood. So these are all the types of worms. They're called leeches. Yeah. For hundreds of years, this was considered a medical... They would sometimes fill up a person's body with leeches and suck out the blood. It's called, you ever heard the expression, taita bankus? Setoigaf taita bankus. What does that mean? The answer is bankus were the leeches that would suck out the blood. And they would die in the process. They would die. So setoigaf taita bankus. Now once the leech is dead, you're not doing anything with it. So this was a very, very famous expression in Yiddish. Today nobody knows what it means. But that's the concept. Yeah. Toita bankas. Yeah.
Using leeches on a dead person. That's how
okay. Very good. So helft via toiten bankas. Yeah. Once the guy died, what are you going to put leeches there? Yeah. They say the surgery. The doctor said the surgery was successful, but the patient died. So helft via toiten bankas. In other words, it's ineffective. Huh?
Bankus is bankus because I remember.
Bankus. Yeah,
They
would put the right.
So just to warm it up.
Yeah.
Piafkas is something else. It's a
Piafka is the leech, the bloodsucker. It's a Russian word, piafka, no? Yeah. Piafkas. Piafkas are the actual leeches that suck out the blood. So many of them, it's interesting. Some of them, if they know what they're doing, this is the reason they suck out the blood is this is their meal. They're not. They're doing it for survival. And then they enjoy it. They go to a dark place usually, and they digest it. Sometimes it takes them months to digest it. Their digestion is a little slower than us. But that's if they know what they're doing. If not, they take a little too much, boom, they're dead. Overdose, yeah. And depends, you have to know what type of leech. I mean, it depends on the matzav. So he says, Kamashal Haluka, fascinating mashal. Shemaitzetze says Saddam, she's sucking out the blood. She knows that she needs the blood. And she thinks she's eating you up. She's taking your blood. But what happens is, Shemismalaz dam, she gets filled up with blood, v'neifelas amesa. As they say in English, she drops dead. Neifelas, she falls, amesa, she dies. So what made her die? What made her die is, she went beyond her limit. A little blood you want to take, okay. She sucks and sucks and sucks and sucks. So it's not the person. Ultimately, that is her own death sentence. So he says, what is this? Is a mashal v'hainuk shamedaber shabaylam hazeh. This is true with all piafkas. Piafkas ultimately destroy themselves. Nobody destroys them. They destroy themselves. The reason they destroy themselves is because they're completely disconnected. Their entire energy is coming from Olam Atayah. They're feeding off Kedusha. That's what they're doing. But be'etzem, they don't have a life be'etzem. Their entire life is that they're feeding off something that they're not connected with in an integrated way. So at some point, it platzes. At some point, it simply doesn't work. It works till it stops working. When the person, this person in Elam Hazah, he fell down from Olam Atayah all the way down here. So on one hand, he's feeding off a powerful energy. But on one hand, it's a nefillah. Like we spoke, what's nefillah? Nefillah means you're not connected. You're not aligned. When he fulfills the purpose, whatever the purpose he represents, but there's a certain purpose that this person came to do, then then he thought it was his own power. No. There was a certain purpose. The moment he finishes it off, so now all the nitzutzes, all the sparks of Kedusha of Tayu, which fell into him, which is what gave him his entire strength. He just thought there was a Eigen Azach. Haman at some point thought they're bowing down to him, because he's brilliant and handsome. He didn't realize it was just to create the whole Purim story. A Pardala, yeah. So the moment you do what you do, it's almost like a clown. He's a clown. He's being used to play a part. You played your part off stage. What do you mean? It's my stage. No. This was not your stage. You were put up as part of a play. You did your job. Boom. Next. So that's what he says. That's like the aluka. Once you start taking too much blood, you start taking too much credit, you're done. What's left now is only a tamtzis of a tamtzis, which means the shirayim of the shirayim, the leftover of the leftover, which he needs to exist, but he doesn't have any more that toikef because he finished his purpose. Then even the tzaddik who comes from Olam Atikun can finish it off. An example is Bilam. Bilam was a very big soul. But what made him a big soul? He came from Tayu. It even says, like come Navi, be Yisrael Kamosha. What does it say in Sifri? Rashi, Aval come be'umas ha'olam Kamosha. By Jews there was no Navi like Moshe. By the non-Jews there was a Navi like Moshe, Bilam. So understand, the Chazal is putting Bilam parallel to Moshe, that he was a prophet as great as Moshe. All the Jews didn't have a prophet like Moshe. Yeah, we had big Nevi'im, Yeshayahu, Yirmiyahu, Yecheskel, Shmuel Navis, Moshe Varim B'chayanav. But nonetheless, Bilam is like Moshe. So it tells you what Bilam is. Bilam wasn't a Katlakanya. But by Bilam, it was a kinderspiel. What does it mean it was a kinderspiel? He didn't own it. He didn't take it seriously. The Gemara says Bilam, Sanhedrin, Bilam is Beloy Am. He had no people. He didn't have loyalty to a people. Moshe was a leader of a people. Bilam was like, a wunderkind. A wunderkind, goes over Europe and makes $100 million. Freelance. He's up for sale. Moshe had loyalty. Moshe came from somewhere. Moshe was rooted in something. He represented something. Bilam, Vegate Sol and Mer. Oh, Balak is paying well. Fine, we cursed the Jewish people. I promise you, if there was a Jewish Rothschild or Rockefeller, they could have bought Bilam to curse Balak. I don't know why they didn't think of that. Maybe Rothschild didn't want to give. Ich weiß nicht. There's an old joke. They said there was a Psarav, and he was known not to be the most honest kid on the block. So there was once a din Torah between two, chashuva people, and one of them saw he's losing. So under the table, they said, he gave an envelope to the Rav. And the Rav took a look at the envelope, $5,000, and suddenly he started to change his view, and the other person won the din Torah. Okay. So the person who lost, who was supposed to win, goes over to the Rav and says, listen, I saw what happened. Now I understand everybody needs money, you also need money. But you're a chashuv Rav. To sell your soul for $5,000, pasnash. The guy would have given you $1 million. What do you do with $5,000? It's barely a shalom zacha, it's $5,000. A vachnacht here costs more than $5,000. What are you going to do with $5,000? You sell your soul for $5,000? You're a chashuv guy. Here's what he asks him. He says, you don't understand. My neshama b'chem fakayv 30 yard tzedek for $10 million. My soul I sold 30 years ago for $10 million. Jetzt is alt revach. Now it's just interest. Now it's another 5,000, another 5,000. Ich bin schon verkaufte neshama. It's done. We're done. Yeah. Somebody once said, I'm a man of principles. If you don't like them, I have other principles. Right? So that's Bilam.
Everything is for sale.
Everything. But what's pshat? But Bilam was a wunderkind. When you say Bilam was like Moshe, people think Bilam was. It doesn't mean Bilam was like Moshe. He was bigger than Yeshaya Navi and Shmuel Navi. Bilam was like Moshe. Mean he had crazy gifts. He had unbelievable crazy gifts and skills, but completely disassociated. It wasn't integrated. He wasn't a serious person. It says in Kabbalah, he didn't have Moyach Hadas. We learned Shabbos what Das is. It wasn't integrated. He didn't stand. It wasn't rooted. He wasn't anchored in anything. And you have this. You have people that they're very, very talented. Yeah, they stand for nothing. And it's really a rachmanis on them because they don't know what to do with it. It's a very big power. They take credit themselves and they use it and they manipulate, they exploit it, and they can even sometimes, accomplish great things. But ultimately they're tortured souls. Because it's not surrender to the source. That's an example of Tohu, which is very talented, to put it. But it goes through a nefillah. There's no connection between the person and the gift. Moshe Rabbeinu, that doesn't exist. Everything is integrated. Everything is one. And it's an avodah to go to that place. Somebody who doesn't have the gifts of Bilam, it's not a big deal. There's nothing to sell. Bilam has what to sell. There's what to sell. But at the end of the day, he's for hire. What does it mean he's for hire? It's not just money. It's, he very, very big. But and everybody knew it. Bilam says, I'm going to give you all the money and gold, silver and gold to curse the Jewish people. Why did he even think of that? Somebody's going to give you all the silver and gold to curse your mother, to curse your children, to curse every Jew. But Balak knew, that's Bilam. It's not a problem. It's not a problem. You have to know, I once heard Rabbi Beryl Wine speak. So he said that, or maybe it was a tape, so he said that he was a Rav Muncie for many years, Rabbi Wine. So he said, this was probably 2 decades ago. So he said, you know how society, when people decide which shul to go to based on the Kiddush. Here there's a good Kiddush, so he's going. Yeah. So Bilam says, who is the Kiddush Besser? So that's the concept of Bilam. So Bilam in many ways has tremendous gifts. There's no question. Not only gifts, he has prophetic gifts. It means he's a psychic. He's a spiritualist. He gets things. But he's not connected. That's a nefillah. So he says, the Jewish people couldn't defeat Bilam. It wasn't simple. Because there was Tayu there. He was feeding off Tayu. Until Moshe took out all the goodness in him. Hashem used Bilam for tremendous prophecy. And Bilam gave us one of the most amazing parshas in Torah. Nobody said beautiful things about Jews like Bilam. Nobody. Right? If you read through Sefer Bamidbar, Right away, by Midbar Nasei, Balois, Chashlach, Koirach, Chukas, it's all downfalls and revolts, and you have Meraglim, mit Koirach, mit Misoinen, mit Slav, Kivris Hatayve, everybody there is corrupt. Suddenly you come to Parshas Balak Bilam, here's the biggest anti-Semite, he says, the Jews, Matoivu Elecha Yaakov, Heinam Kilam, really, which Jews? We just learned a ganze Sefer that they're lowlifes, and God wants to get rid of them, and suddenly it's a whole new Parsha of Jews. It's very interesting, you want to know the power of Jews, speak to the anti-Semites. Don't ask Jews about Jews. They don't know Jews. They know themselves and their issues. You understand? Bilam suddenly speaks about Jews. That from Bilam's mouth, literally, how do we open up every day's davening? Who do you think said that? Not Moshe, Bilam. That's the greatest lines. All the prophecies of Mashiach come from Bilam. Dorach koichav miyakov kam shevet miyisrael machatz paasei moav. What the future world is going to look like. The most beautiful things about the Jewish people in Chumash come from Bilam. What happened here? This was Bilam's shirish coming out. This was taken out. V'oz yotzim emenu achelek hatoiv shehu inyan ha'oiris ha'takifim detoyu shezeh mashamar Bilam v'ata hineni oilech la'ami. Bilam finished and he told Balak, I'm going back to my people. Now what he essentially was saying is the leech has sucked out all the blood. V'azay ha'yisrael yichaylam like mashakasav as Bilam ben Bered hargu b'charav. Mashenkin lifnei mitzim mered shemes achelek hatoiv shebehem koidim shetismali sasam she'az mitziusam ibetoikav gadol mitzad ha'oiris hatakifim detoyu sheyesh b'hem azayiv shalachni ha'osam. But before you take out the chelek hatoiv, meaning before the lights of Toyu exit their system, before their cup is filled, that they fulfilled their purpose, why they're here, to access a certain light into the world. And then they just have a Metzias with tremendous, tremendous strength, so then even the tzaddik who comes from Olam HaTikun often cannot subdue them. And that's what Hashem tells Eve, here you need me myself. So here you have the general choice. Sometimes the Medaber of Toyu lends himself with free choice to be subdued, to be sublimated. That takes humility. Haman is not ready for that. Bilam is not ready for that. Pare is not ready for that. So sometimes you have to say that it's time to go inward, or Hashem says, let me take this on. Boyal Pare, I'm going to take this on. Once, however, they fulfill their purpose, now that energy is not there. That oiris, the kifim, the tayu is not there. It's not Hashem Mesachekes Lo anymore. So now it's the leech. After it already took out the blood, now the leech is ready to die. Because the leech never really had power. Bilam never really had power. It was all oiris of Toyu that was feeding it. So it was for purpose. So as long as the Toyu was feeding it, fine. The moment it's not, now of course the tzaddik can defeat the Rasha. But there's another element here. There's another aspect here. Another way. On this it says in Zohar, even though Hashem waits for the Rishayim until their cup fills, like we said before with the Amoiri, Mikal Makayim, Ksheim Mitzid, Emu Meikim Li Yisrael, Azeh HaKadosh Baruch Hu Oiseh B'hem Din, Afa B'Shalei Nismal Yisasam. If they're going beyond their limit and they're oppressing the Jewish people, so here, even before their Sa'ah, sometimes they keep to themselves, they do their own thing in their own corrupt place. Bilam, he was doing his thing. But once they already cross what we call a certain boundary, and now they're oppressing the Jewish people, so then HaKadosh Baruch Hu Oiseh B'hem Din. So here, even before the oiris of Toyu leave, there'll be a defeat. What's pshat? V'hainu shameitzer li Yisrael ha'yidei Rishayim mevi is pulas shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu li yizhidach Rishayim tachtam. The oppression that they oppress the Jewish people through these Rishayim, this generates the activity of Hashem, like he told Eve, to crush them even when they're in their Teikaf HaMetzias. And Hashem has to do it, like he told Moshe, Boyal Para. This says in Zohar. That Tzemach Tzedek explains it also al pi nigla. The Isa bi Yerushalmi v'vu b'toisus b'kedushin. It says in Talmud Yerushalmi in Meseches Peah, and Toisus brings it in Kedushin Lametez. Sheba'akum ba'ovdik echavim u'mazol is gam machshava ra Kadosh Baruch Hu mitzarfa l'maisa. By akum, by idol worshippers, by the shayim, even a machshava, a bad thought, is considered like an action, because it's usually going to bring to it. When you're dealing with a neshama, so then machshava ra, ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu mitzaref l'maisa. It's a thought. The Maharal explains that when you have a negative thought, it's really alien to you. So if it's alien to you, you have to actually prove that you meant it. So if you do it, you did it. But if you didn't do it, it's just a thought. But by the Ovid Yechav, it's the opposite. The default mode is negativity. So if you have a machshava, yeah, that's the trajectory. You understand? The question is, what's natural, what's unnatural? So im kain kashegarak from also came b'poyel. So if they just think of doing it, so the machshava raz, it's like they did it already. Now what happens? What does the Zohar mean? Why when they oppress the Jewish people, things change? So he says what happens then is the good goes out of them. It's like back to the Toita Bankas, the leech. As long as it remains in its own world, it doesn't die. But once it attacks and it takes blood and more blood and more blood and more blood, and it dies. So what happens here is when these Rishon that come from Olam HaTayim, now they're coming and taking blood and trying to destroy. So what happens is their whole toiv goes out in this process. So even by just thinking about it, it's like the toiv goes out of them because it's like they did it. It's like their cup is full, like they're done. The word is, the machshavtei hara, the evil scheme of Haman should go back onto his head. Haman never killed the Jews. It was a machshava. But that machshava, l'poil they were saved. But that machshava is mitzar for l'mais. It's like he did. And once the leech is taking out the blood, now what happens in this process is it dies. It dies. And the machshava is mitzar for l'mais. What's the havana here? Yeah. The minute he thought about it, that was already his verdict. It's like he did it already. And once he did it, once the leech actually takes out the blood, the toiv leaves. And then you can get defeated. And Hashem defeats him. The Ramaz, one of the Mefarshim on Zohar, Rabbi Moshe Zakuti explains, the kiv on sham mitzidim u'meikim garmim liyisrael levatel mitoydo masim toivim. When they oppress the Jewish people, they cause the Jewish people to cease from Torah and masim toivim. Dinu sheyizbatlu mipneihem. That's what the Ramaz says. So dinu, its warrant is that they should become nullified. Why? Because even if they come from Tayu, it's ultimately from an external energy. And Torah and mitzvahs and the Bnei Yisrael come from Pneumius. What's Pshat? So here you have to understand in Nekuda. It's true, we said that Tayu is higher than Tikkun. And the light of Tayu is higher than the light of Tikkun. And that's why the Nefesh Abamis has such power. And that's why Bilam had such power, and Pare had such power, etc. That's all true. But you have to know that their nurture, their chayas is coming from a place what's called chitzonius. V'loy mepchinas hapnimius. Not from pnimius, not from the ultimate core. Ki pchinas hapnimius shayeches liyisrael davka. K'mesha kasav yoyir Hashem panav elecha. God will shine His face, His panav, from the word pnimius to you. Panav daika, the word is face, panav. Kedisa begamar, the Gemara says in brachas, dav chav shakadish baruch hu omer, v'chilay esa panam liyisrael shakasafti lem b'teira chuli v'hem edaktakim alatzmam. It says that the Malachim said, you said, Ashalayis upon him, you're not going to show face to anybody. And here you say, Yishta Hashem Panav, you show deference and you're nice upon him, like you give them a special. So he said, how could I not? I told them to make a bracha. When they become satiated, and they say even a kazayis, a kabetza. So the inyan of es upon him, it's a special inyan of pnimius. V'kashragilu him b'chinas ha-pnimius. When there comes out the Pnimius, Al Zen Nemer on this, the Pasuk says in Yirmiyah, Hineni Moshiacha Meirachaik. I'm going to help you even from the distance. And he explains, and here we have to understand the Inyan. It says in Zohar, in Tehillim chapter 10, David HaMelech says, God, why do you stand so far from me? Lama Hashem Tamid Meirachik. Why are you standing far? Come close. Talim li'itis batzara. You go into hiding in times of tzara. Come close. Why are you standing far away? In Yirmiyah he says, Hinini Moshiacha meirachik. I'm going to help you from a distance. David HaMelech says, why are you standing far? Come close. Yeah. We say, Shalom, Shalom, Larachik v'lakarev. The Gemara says, Larachik shenasa karev. So that's the Nakuda here. There's a Rachik where he says, why are you standing so far? And then Yirmiyah says, Hinini Moshiacha meirachik. I'm going to help you. The Rachik becomes the karev. He says, what's the inyan here? The Mashakos of Lo Mashem Tamid Berachik Hayal Zman HaGolus. Why do you stand far away? Is referring to Galus. As the Zohar says, Kuchabrichu ascends le'elo higher and higher, like we learned Lamaila Maila Adin Ketz goes higher and higher in concealment. Goes to a level where the pasuk says in Tehillim, darkness is like light, meaning they're both the same. And not only darkness is like light, because he transcends both of them. It goes to such a high place, so darkness and light become identical. But furthermore, the Toyu can even be more powerful than Tikkun. And therefore, you could stand from a distance, meaning from the perspective of the people, you seem completely concealed. And it seems like you're indifferent, you're like far away. This is when you look at it from a place of chitzonius, when what we're experiencing is only the external mechanism of it. The moment the pnimiyus comes out, the truth comes out, then suddenly the rachak is nishken rachak, the rachak is a karev. I'm going to help you from a distance. Your word Yeshua comes from the word shah, vayisha, turning, which in Kabbalah is Shin Ayin Hei Nahid in 375 lights. Shin Ayin Hei Shuinyin Ha'ares Panim B'chinas HaPnimiyus Sheyeches LiYisrael Davka. When the Pnimiyus comes out, now there's no mistake where it goes. It goes to Kedusha, it goes to goodness. Vaydezem is Batlam Kol HaMetzidim U'Me'ikim LiYisrael. Gam B'Yoysem B'Mayim Adamatzim Sheyesh B'Mayres Takifim D'Toyer Shalai Nismalos Asam Kivon Shem B'chinas HaChitzonius B'Lvad V'Liyisrael B'Toyer Mitzvah B'chinas HaPnimiyus. And then when you have this oppression, it gets nullified. Even when they have all of these strong iris of Tayu, how can that be? Hasham Esachekes, because ultimately they come from Chitzonius. And Yisrael and Torah mitzvahs come from Pnimius. And when the Chitzonius is trying to destroy the Pnimius, so now ultimately the Tayu gets defeated even when the Rasha is in its full intensity. What's the Vart here? What's the Vart? He says, you always have to know the difference between the puzzle and the author of the puzzle. When you say Tayu is higher than Tikkun, it's true Tayu is higher than Tikkun. But it's a setup. Right? Tayu is higher than Tikkun because Tayu represents that which comes from a much deeper source in Kedusha, where there's tremendous light and energy. And then the light falls and goes through a shvira. So it's not recognizable, but the intensity remains. In Tikkun, the light comes down in a gradual way, so it's aligned, so the intensity is not there. And that's the power of Tayu. And that's why the Nefesh HaBahamis has so much power. That's why the Guf has so much power. It has the sparks of Tayu, and that's why whenever we're eating or dealing with anything physical, you're touching Tayu, and Tayu is higher than Tikkun, and as much as it needs you to elevate it, you also need it because it's going to elevate you. Like he said in the beginning of the Maimer. Then you'll have a person, like he says, a medaber, who also represents Tayu, or at least parts of him represent Tayu. And even if that person is completely detached from their spiritual source, and therefore in a much lower level than the tzaddik, but the sparks of Tayu can feed his energy and consciousness, even if it's unconscious. The hour is smiling at him. The leech is sucking the blood. And as a result of that, even the tzaddik himself, who comes from Tikkun, with the power of Tikkun itself, can't defeat him. That's what Hashem tells Eev. Yeah, that's what he was masbir here a whole time. And the tzaddik knows that this is not a time I could go out and confront and subdue. I have to go in. Even Moshe says, I can't go to Parai now until Hashem says, I'm going to take this one. This is on me. Like he spoke about Bilam and the Avoin HaMairi, etc. But the Zohar says, once they come and start oppressing the Jewish people and Amavatal Torah and Ma'asim Tovim and the Jewish people, here something changes. What's the inyan here? When you say Toyu is higher than Tikkun, it means the way it's set up. The way it's set up, Toyu has a power that Tikkun doesn't have. That's what we call Chitzonius. But in the Pnimius, Toyu is not more powerful than Tikkun. There's no such a thing. Of course Tikkun is more powerful. Because when you're talking about the Kavanah Elyoina, when you're talking about the divine purpose of the creation, the purpose wasn't Olam HaToyu. The purpose was that Toyu should ultimately be integrated with Olam HaTikkun. Esav is the B'chayr, the way it's set up. The way it's set up is that in this world, Toyu has so much power because Tikkun needs to get its netzutzas, and its netzutzas are very, very high. But the moment Toyu starts thinking that it's really the master, it's really the boss, now it just signed its death sentence. Now it's over. Ultimately, it's all feeding the kavanah. So when you talk about chitzonis means the way it looks, the way it's set up. The board game. So you say, wow, this is Toyu, this is Tikkun. Tikkun has that echeretz for Toyu. But the moment Toyu wants to go over to Pnimius, meaning the moment Toyu starts taking credit on its own, and the moment Toyu wants to destroy Tikkun, thinking that it is the boss, it is the master, now it's over.
It goes rogue.
Huh?
It goes rogue.
Yeah, it goes rogue, you're saying. Yeah. As long as Toyu is being Toyu, it's being Toyu. When it finishes its purpose, it leaves it, its energy, the energy leaves, and then you can defeat it. But when Toyu here is now trying to destroy, he says, Mitzidim u'me'ikim liYisrael, that's what the Zohar says. So as the Ramaz explains, now it's a whole different matzav. Yeah, but the word is not so much intervenes. In other words, the moment you touch Pnimius, not Chitzonius, then the truth comes out. Yeah. In other words, Toyu is here to serve a certain purpose. It's here to bring out the koiches of Tikkun. It's here to elevate Tikkun. It's here to give to the Yiddish should be tzarech aliyah. The moment that Toyu goes out of its boundary, right, and it wants to destroy the core of everything, the Toiv and the Kedusha, now of course it's low. Now it has no koyach. Now it defeats itself. Now it's the leech that's taking the blood and doesn't realize that in this process you're literally killing yourself. You're finished. This is your end. Your whole kavanah was you did the tzarech aliyah. The moment you start thinking that the chitzonius is the pnimius and this is the kavanah, now Toyu can't exist anymore. Now Toyu loses its power, loses its process. In every person's life, it's like this. It's not just we're not just talking about on a cosmic level, like everything. We're talking also on an individual level. There's the chitzonius of life and there's the pnimius of life. The chitzonius of life is the way things play themselves out. It's like the chess game. The way things are on the board, the way they're expressed, the way the world is set up, the moving pieces. That's what you read in the newspaper. This person was appointed a president, this one was appointed a senator, this one was appointed a congressman, this person is a prime minister, this person became a minister, this person, like that's the setup on the board. That's the chitzonius. And that creates what's called the game of life, right? The theatrical game of life where everyone is playing their role.
It also creates a narrative.
Creates a narrative, yeah. As long as everyone is doing their role the best they can, fine. The moment the chitzonius becomes the pnimius, now it's over. So that's the way chitzonius. In the chitzonius, Toyu has a lot of power. And there's a reason it has this power. The moment it starts taking that power to itself, and it replaces Hashem, the moment Haman thinks he's really going to destroy the Jewish people, Amalek thinks he's really going to destroy the Jewish people, he's going to change the entire purpose of existence, now it's over. You're a servant at the end of the day. It's like if you could give a mashal, you have a play, a big play. So in a play, you have a lot of different actors. Yeah? And if it's a good play, you have the heroes, you have the villains. Yeah. At the end of the play, what happens? They all bow down. Yeah, they all come out on the front stage. They bow down. Well, he was the murderer. He was the victim. But together, they're both bowing down. Okay, now I know it's a play. What's pshat? What they're all saying is we were just actors, and we were just trying to tell a story. I told a story my way. You told a story your way. Now, ach and vei, in life, if you could choose to be the hero, that you choose to be the villain. That's a rachmanis. It's a rachmanis. But ultimately, at the end of the day, everyone makes choices in their lives. Everybody's choice contributes to the story of the play. How? That the director is going to figure out how your bchira is going to contribute to the end game. But at the end game, everybody bows, and everybody's part of the story. Yeah. One person becomes part of the story by choosing this path. Another person becomes part of the story by choosing another path. Now you have to choose. The acting, they say, which is the old Jewish joke about, This kid comes home from school. The school was having a production. So his father tells him, what part did they give you in the production? He says, I'm a Jewish husband. He says, tell them you want a speaking part. I guess he was his own house. I guess that's how it was. So every person chooses ultimately the role that you play. But there's one Tanai. The Tanai is, it's a part. You have a part. There's other parts. The moment the actor starts thinking, I own this play, I own this production, I'm actually going to kill this guy. I don't like him. Now you're done. This was just your act, your play. And this is a very Yisaitis the Kavart in life. Toyu is Toyu. It has a lot of koiches, big time. And be careful, you have to have derech, you have to know there's a system. That's as long as it's not touching the pnimius. The moment Toyu goes in and suddenly starts taking over the whole plot, the whole strategy, now ultimately it's futility, it's emptiness, it's lie. The lie of arrogance comes out. So all these Hagbalas that we spoke before, when Toyu gets defeated, suddenly, it's doichikas haketz. It pulls the rug out of under its feet. That's what the Zohar is saying. That's what the Ramaz is explaining. Because ultimately, you're dealing with what means pnimis versus chitzonius. Chitzonius is the setup. Pnimius is what you really care about. What truth is. Where Hashem Yisa Hashem Panav Elecha. There's a big chitzonius the world, but where's the pnimius? Where's the amitius? Where's the emes? And everyone has to choose. Do you live in the world of chitzonius? Do you live in the world of pnimius? Living in the world of chitzonius is basically defining your vision of life, based on WhatsApps and newspapers. It's like you live in that world. Living in the world of pnimius is living in the world of what really matters, what's really happening, what's negated to the kavana halyoina of the bria. It's a different frequency. The chitzonius, God set up the chitzonius. We have a derech for the chitzonius. But at the moment the chitzonius wants to it thinks it's going to take over the pnimius, it starts making a change in the plan. You're an employee in the company. You want to now come back and rethink the company and say, we're not doing this anymore, we're doing the opposite, now it's over. Now Toyu is nothing. It's garnished. Why is garnished? What, it had all this oil. It had all this oil because it was coming from Hashem. The moment you're going into God's system and you're telling him, no, Ra is going to win over Toyu. We're going to destroy the Jewish people. We're going to destroy Torah and mitzvahs. Now the whole Toyu is garnished. It's like you put the needle in the balloon. Live your story, don't try to change it. And every person's life, listen, talking a person's life, what's Toyu? Toyu are those parts of us that are disassociated, those parts of us that are unresolved, those parts of us that are wounded. They always have the most energy, and they can create the most chaos in your life, more than tikkun. Why? Because that's where your secrets are. That's where your growth is. Yeah, like we always say, our traumas, our wounds. Listen to this. This is serious stuff. They hold hostage our treasures, our lights. When we have the courage to pierce through the Toyu and open the nitzutz, you find your deepest light always. What happens when your trauma decides that it's Taka the boss? I'm Taka God. I'm not just a Keli. I'm not just a Hachana. I'm not just the safe, the vault that's hiding your treasures. I'm Taka the boss.
You're not surrendering.
It doesn't surrender. Not only does not surrender, it takes over. It starts thinking that its entire power is not the truth because it's really hiding the ultimate light of the soul. but rather it wants to ultimately destroy the light of the soul. In this very process, it also destroys itself. You were here for a purpose, you're doing it well, and you're creating a lot of chaos. And as long as that's part of the purpose, fine. But the moment you're not just creating chaos, you're rewriting the narrative of life, that's often when a person wakes up and says, this is what's happening, Zoisloi. That's it. Toyu is a channel, but Toyu doesn't replace God. And that's the idea of the Rachik. Hineni Mashiach me Rachik. Rachik means Kutchabrichu Salik Leilo Leila, there's darkness and there's a distance. He says, Lama Hashem Tamid Berachik. Because over there, Chashecha Ka'ira, Toyu has a power, and even a bigger power. That's only Rachik when it's part of the Chitzonius. When the Toyu now starts affecting the Pnimis and wants to destroy the Jewish people, it says, Hineni Mashiach me Rachik. I don't care how distant I am. I don't care you're calling me distant, I'm aloof, I'm dark. Helim achahelim, ilu yacharilu. No. Hineni Mashiach me Rachik. From the greatest distance, I'm here. Don't think for a moment that this Rachik is a real Rachik. It's part of the Inyan. That's what there's Lama Hashem Tamid Mirachik. I don't want this. But then there's Hineni Mashiach Mirachik. Because the moment the Toyu wants to take over in a way, as he says, to destroy Chas v'Shalom, the Jewish people, then Hineni Mashiach Mirachik. This Rachik was just a setup. It's not a real Rachik.
That's where we are now.
Huh?
That's where we are now.
Yeah. I was thinking about that. That's where we are now, yeah. And here he says it in Isis of Kabbalah. And you'll see why I went through the four names before, because you'll see how he says very interesting.
When somebody thinks that Hashem is Mirachik, it's just basically what he is in.
In other words, mitzad the state of Chitzonius, Hashem could be Mirachik. And that's how it is. Mitzad the state of Chitzonius. Mitzad the state of Pnimius, he says never, there's no such a thing. In other words, when we say there's a place where I'm so aloof, I'm so infinite, that the darkness and the light work together, and darkness is as powerful as light, and Toyu could be more powerful than Tikkun. That's all in the stage, in the setup, and it's a real experience. We're not denying it. And that's why David is crying, Lama Hashem tamid meirachik, talim li'itis batzara. Ad masai tastir es panecha mimeni. How long? Because in the human consciousness and experience, it's a very real experience, and you have to honor that experience. And even there's the point that the tzaddik says, it's not time to start up with Toyu, go inward and do your avodah. But when Toyu loses the plot completely, unconsciously, and he says, that's it, I became God, right? You see it in history. You have the Hitlers of the world, the Hamans of the world. They lose the plot. You understand? They're not just busy with their own arrogance and their own parties and their own orgies and their own Mishagasan and their own hefkedis and promiscuity. But now they're going to change the narrative. The Yimach Shemaynik once said that his job is to get rid of God and his life denying 10 commandments. That's his job.
Speed up his life.
That's his mission. His mission. Yeah, that's his mission. He's going to kill. The Titus said he's going to stab the Paroiches, right, and kill the Rebbeinu Shalom. And it says that blood came out. The Gemara says in Maseches Gittin. And in every person's life, what that means is, we have our challenges, we have our Meshagasan, and they're there to hold the treasures until you're ready to explore them. Veldik. Once the demon takes over to the point that he's going to change the entire plot and hijack your Pnimius, and that's it. Now he just gave himself a death sentence. Yeah. Hineni Mashiach meirachik. I don't care how distant I am. Hineni Mashiach, and it's a pchin of Yeshua, Shinai and Heina Hayden. It's the of Esa Panim. Yored Hashem Panav Elecha. Panav, the Pnimius. Because the Pnimius never changed. The Chitzonius was just there creating the setup and the structure for things to happen. Great. And it's a difficult structure. It's a tough chess game. We're not denying that it's a tough chess game. The Chitzonius is a very, very intense plot in order to make this whole mission. And much of it we don't even understand how it works. Why evil happens and suffering and all that. But that's all if it's Chitzonius. I don't mind. Bizda. The moment you come into Pnimius, Zaislai. Of course, this is all about awareness. This is all about awareness. But this is true because every person, the wounds of Olam HaToyu, which have such power. That's why you see people could stay trapped their whole life. Because Toyu has tremendous power. And the reason it has tremendous power is only because of Kedusha. Because it secretly is holding the key to your light. As long as that's what's happening, there's a certain process. But you have to understand it's playing a role. It's an actor in the play. At the end, he's going to give a bow. They're all v'anachnu they're all going to bow to Hashem. The moment he says, I'm not in the play, I make the play. Now he wants to snuff out your soul. No, you were just a game. You were part of a game that was an important part. I mean, I'm calling it a game. It's not such a game, but you understand my point. And that's why you never take it completely seriously. Take the chitzonius seriously, not the pnimius seriously. Don't take the pnimius seriously. Don't take it seriously on a pnimius dika level. Take it seriously on a chitzonius dika level. Well, the whole ego and the fears and the insecurity and this. Yeah, I know, it's hard. But legabe your pnimius, it's not toifas mokim b'chlal. Your neshama is a chelik alakamimal, it's ein soif, it doesn't have a tfisas mokim. It's there to be able to set up the pieces. Gesund to hate. So take it seriously as much as you... Somebody once said an anti-Semite is somebody who hates Jews more than necessary. Yeah, the real anti-Semitic of art. More than necessary, you understand? Take your trauma seriously, but not more than necessary. Necessary to grieve, to cry, to feel the pain. But once you're confusing it with your neshama, with Ein Sof, no. To grow, yeah, take it serious. And take it serious doesn't mean it's a joke. Chitzonius is not a joke. Chitzonius is the ganze Welt. All the newspapers together, all the history books. Yeah, und sie nicht nur eingerettet. It's Toyu and Tikkun is the system. But it's the system. It's like the system, people talk about the system. Do you take the system seriously? At kan. Don't turn it into God. You remember, it's serving a purpose. It's serving a purpose. So even the whole top people go through a lot of stuff, and it's your toyu, and you need to understand it. But don't turn that into Ein Sof. Realize it's here to bring out the best, and sometimes it's a difficult challenge, and it's a difficult process, and you have to work it through, and you have to respect the process. You can't just say there's no... That's what we're learning here with toyu. You don't just say, I destroy toyu when I want to. No. Hashem is like there's a process. Right, people who want to short circuit experiences, it's called bypassing, right? You want to bypass. So you want to bypass grief, you want to bypass pain, you want to bypass what you felt. It's going to come back to haunt you. And there's a reason, not because of cruelty, but because your toyu has strong nitzutzas. So if you want to go get those nitzutzas, you have to work with toyu. But that's if there's some deep recognition that there's a pnimius that transcends everything. The inyan of Einoid Movada. Yeah. The moment it takes over the whole game, the ganze parsha, this is already the end of it. This is its own verdict of death. This is the leech. You took out too much blood. You want to take a little blood and gain weiter? Fine. I'll be meichel you. Go. You'll die in a couple of years. Leeches don't live for more than 1 or 2 years. You know that. They don't have big arichis yam. How much can you live off somebody else's blood? A piafka could live a year. A piafka could live 2 years. I remember there was once a Fabrengen from the Lubavitcher Rebbe. I think it was Parshas Mishpatim or Truma. I think Mem Dalet or Mem Hey 84, 85. I was a kid, and the Rebbe was talking about piafkas. So he said, "Was is a piafke? A piafke is a bloodsucker in Russian. Kriegt sein Chayes von Zappen Blut. He gets his life from sucking somebody else's blood. Unfortunately, there are people who become piafkes. Their energy in life is from sucking other people's blood. Literally, that's their Chayes. If there's more blood and they suck it, the more Chayes they get. They wake up in the morning. Yeah, you're thinking about breakfast. Whatever your breakfast is, a croissant, what do you think about a croissant with an omelet, with cheese, a bissel tomato, a bissel avocado, yeah? Other people think of breakfast to come learn Chassidus. That's their breakfast. And another person's breakfast is whose blood are we going to suck today? It says on Pinchas, Vayikach roimach biyodai. He took a spear in his hand. Was it in his hand? Yeah, of course, he didn't take it in his foot. Yeah, so there's a word, I think it's from Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, maybe his son Rabbi David Feinstein. So he said, Vayikach roimach biyodai means some people, right when they wake up in the morning, before they leave the house, they already put a roimach into the tash, into the kashana, and they're just waiting to use it. Who can I use it? Oh, we'll find somebody. Says by Pinchas, he didn't walk around. Vayikach roimach biyodai. He just then took a roimach. He wasn't walking around with a roimach. So some people, their chiyus is, they're piafkas. I can still see the Rebbe saying it with so much passion. It was so hurtful for them. This is their chayus. The more you could suck blood, I'm more alive. Oh, now I feel alive. But a piafka, ultimately, there's nothing there. There's nothing left. Because there was nothing there, lechatchila. Huh? A piafka, mamash a piafka. This is his chayas, his energy. If you're not a piafka, it's hard to understand what a piafka is. If you're a piafka, you know what it is. Sometimes, yeah. If you've had a lot of contact with them. Okay, so let's finish here in the kud. Uklala seinyan baza. The toyu v'tiku nimshachim me'ashem sag uma. Ach yesh no shem av shalamayla mishneim. U'menu nimshach liyasin nimshachim me'rachak. There's ma and sag. Ma is tikun. Sag, which is gas, is toyu. But av is higher than both. So as long as sag is being sag, fine. When sag wants to replace av, ayin beis, then there's nothing left. The hinir do a hefresh ben shem sag l'shem av u'rak b'milia oiz vav. Sheb'shem av hu b'yud vav yud vav. Mashenga b'shem sag hu ba'alev vav alev vav. Shezel mashenema be'esav loshen aluf yud alef aluf yesav hainu shemitzat shvidus hakelim nafal m'shem sag lamata b'ifrin shel yeshes u'metzias shezel inyan aluf. You hear how everything works here? I told you sag is yud vav daled hey yud vav alef vav hey yud av. The vav changes to vav yud vav. So what's the difference between sag and av? A vav, an aleph, or a yud? Aleph comes from the word aluf. What's aluf? What's aluf? A commander. What are they in the Hebrew? What's aluf? A general, huh? Nobody knows Hebrew here. Aluf is a general. Who's called in Chumash? Who gets the title aluf? The family of Esav. Alufei Esav at the end of Vayishlach. Aluf Teiman and Aluf Loitan, all the alufim. The word aluf comes from the word aleph. Aluf means you're a leader, you're a commander, you're a general. He says that's the yeshus that fell down, exalted, that fell down from Toyu of Shem Sag. The Sag in its source is God's exaltedness. When Shver Sakelim, I become the arrogant. I have Napoleonic syndromes. That's the aluf. That's why sag has an aleph. Vav aleph vav. Av is vav yud vav. Ve'ein zekamay eis aleph shebetayra. It's not like the aleph in Torah. Alufei Esav is not the same aleph. Al derech ze b'shem ma sheyesh bekama alfen. Name ma is also aleph. Yud, hey, vav, hey. You see it's spelled out. Hey aleph, vav, hey aleph. Sha aleph umiloshen aleph chachma aleph chabina chachma bina degdush. The aleph in Shem ma or in Torah is basically I'm going to teach you. Aleph from the word La'alef, to teach. Aleph chachma, it says in Iyov. I'm going to teach you chachma, I'm going to teach you bin. Shal yadam nasein in habitl. When you learn chachma and bin, you become more humble. It opens your mind. You become curious. You become open. Mashenkin ois aleph shebeshem sag, shemizen ishavu b'shviris hakelim aluf yesav v'inyan shal yeshus u'metziyas. But the aleph of sag, which fell down in shviris hakelim into Esav, this creates arrogance. V'zeh shemitzat shem av shu b'yud l'mayla me'alef sheb'shem sagu matoyu v'tikun nasi hineni mishiach me'rachik liyas hidoch rishayim. So therefore in Ma you have the aleph of bittul. In Sag you have the aleph of yeshus, of arrogance. Both aleph, depends how you interpret aleph. Av doesn't have an aleph. Av is yud. In other words, complete bittul, complete surrender to Ein Sof. Once Av comes in, it's higher than Ma and it's higher than Sag. And b'meila, it can defeat Toyu. Even Toyu is in its full intensity, because once you touch Av, it's not defined anymore by Ma and Sag. It's higher than both. So Ma is not weaker than Sag in that space. Now the Pnimius comes out. Once the Pnimius comes out, it realizes that everything is rooted in Av. And once it's rooted in Av, Ayin Beis, so then Sag doesn't have real power, so then the Toyu gets defeated.
So Av is higher than Sag only by 9, which is Emes.
Yeah, not, the number 9 is Emes, the different, yeah. So now let's finish the last point here. Now everything comes back to the beginning. You remember how it started? It says Vayivez, it says about Haman in the Megillah, that Vayivez, what was the Lashon? The pasuk was Vayivez be'einav l'shloach yad b'mardechai levadai. It was demeaning for him. It was embarrassing for him just to kill Mardechai. He needs to kill everybody. So the Medrash says, Vayivez bazui ben bazui. He already had a grandfather. Vayivez Esav esabchayda. What's the connection? Vayivez Esav esabchayda means he embarrassed the birthright. Vayivez be'einav means he was embarrassed just to kill Mordechai. What's the connection? Stam Vayivez. On this he started the whole thing that the Medrash gives the mashal of the bird, right? The bird that had built a nest and then it got flooded. So the bird who survived the nest, who survived the flood, said, I'm going to take revenge. I'm going to turn the yam into yabasha and yabasha into yam. So he takes his beak, his nose, and he starts collecting water. So his friend comes and says, Shaita, this is not going to work. You're not going to be able to dry out the ocean. So this is what Haman said. So Hashem came to him and said, Shaita Shabayolam, I also tried. Ich habe euch geprüft. And I wasn't successful. Moshe came and destroyed everything. I also tried. Lule Moshe Amad Beperetz Lefanov. I would have done it. So now you think you're going to do it. So he asked, how does he call Haman Chaveda, his friend? The Medrash said it's a friend. He became suddenly Hashem's friend. So now after the whole Maimer, it's a hafla of a fellow. What's pshat here? Vayivez Esav esabchayda doesn't just mean he embarrassed the bchayda because he sold it. It means, what does real embarrassment? It means Esav never understood his bchayda. Vayivez ben esabchayda means he didn't understand who he was. He was disassociated. That was Haman's same mistake. Vayivez ben esabchayda is Esav doesn't realize what his bchayda is. He thinks he's essentially more powerful than Yaakov. No! You're just manifesting tayu. In Avodah, what does this mean? It's when your wounds, your trauma, your challenges think that they're really more powerful than you. The Klippa thinks it's higher than the Kedusha. No, you're just here to hold the treasures and to give it to the person in the right way and the right time so that it can be integrated. You read it, Tzarech Aliyah. Vayivez beinav esabchayda, he thinks it's his own. He thinks he's be'etzem, superior. He's God. That's the Vayivez. And that's why the word is bazui, ben bazui. You're completely misunderstanding your power, who you are, what you represent. That's Haman's same mistake. That's why it's the same Vayivez. Haman thinks he's going to kill Mardechai and kill every Jew. Why can they even think this way? Because they come from Tayu. Tayu is higher than Tikkun. In their source, so it's a paradox. The reason they could think this way is because they have tremendous holy power. It's just completely distorted. They have aloof. They're aloof. And they have aloof. They're sublime. When Hashem calls him my friend, it's essentially telling him, you have to understand who you are. In your source, it's all Kedusha. There's no such a thing that Tayu is not Kedusha. And the moment you're going to use your intensity to change the whole plot and destroy Kedusha, ois Tayu, ois kaplishmacher. You don't got anything outside of this. So it's the friend, because in the Shirish, Tayu is a friend. That's its power. That's why you can't really fight Kedusha. If in its source Tayu wasn't holy, then there's a real competition. Like two teams. But since the whole Tayu comes, you're my friend, really in the Shirish, you're part of me, you're my best, you're my chaver. So therefore it's one team, it's not two teams. So the moment you're now fighting the team, now you're fighting yourself, now you're destroying yourself. The tragedy of Haman and Esav inside of us is that it starts believing in duality. It starts thinking there's a real duality psychologically. Oh, now you're fighting yourself because you're really part of the team. As long as you're part of the team, I don't care if your job in the team is that you're the villain. I don't care, but at the end you got to take a bow. Take a bow. You know how at the end of the play everybody holds hands? Yeah, and And everybody applauds them. Whatever it is. The moment you extricate yourself, what they call in Yiddish, the Machshon Shabbos Fazich. You understand? This is already your world, it's your game. Now it's over. So here this is the whole in. Alpizi even my medrash hala pasuk Vayivez bein of Bozi ben Bozu lahalak se Vayivez es sabchayde. The kank se Vayivez bein of Yakasham lahaj kol Yehudim dihine si basatoik of the Haman shebeglal ze shein Mordechai kirei mishtachveloi. Lachen Vayivez bein of Yakasham lahaj kol Yehudim he beglal sheskener shel Mordechai Yaakov mishtachvel skener shel Haman Esav. Shetaychon o shel ishtachava zu hu inyan agdim de toyu shosh shel Esav letikon shosh shel Yaakov shezel ma she'esav hu abcher kanal siv gimel. The whole reason Haman is so powerful. And when Mordechai doesn't bow down to him, he goes crazy. And he says, I have to kill you and everybody. The Medrash says, because your Zayda bowed down to my Zayda. What in the world is the connection? Because your Zayda 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, bowed down to my Zayda, I have to bow down to you. The pshat is, why did Yaakov bow down to Esav? So the Alter Rebbe says, because Esav is Toyu, Yaakov is Tikkun. And Yaakov thought at that moment Esav was Nisbarer, so he should bow down to Esav. Because Tikkun bows down to Toyu. So therefore, Esav is the B'chayr. So Haman says, no. And when Mordechai says, absolutely not, you're a behemoth, you're a lowlife, you're a murderer, I'm never going to bow down to you. Haman goes crazy. So there's two Hamans, a tale of two Hamans. The Haman down here goes crazy because he's an arrogant Jew hater. In Shirish, Haman is going crazy because Toyu is higher than Tikkun. So you're supposed to bow down to me. In the Shirish, Haman says, 1 second, I'm higher than you. In the Shirish of Haman. Haman Lamata is a Shviras HaKelim. Haman Lamata is a Rasha. In the Shirish, Haman says, your Zayda bow down to my Zayda. Esav is the B'chayr. Because in Pnimiyus, Toyu is higher than Tikkun. So therefore, I have to kill you, and I have to kill all your people. You're completely playing with God's system. I'm superior. Toyu is higher. In a funny way, Haman has this crazy strength and power. I mean, who comes up and sits in his bed and says, I'm going to kill every single Jew that's alive? It's a few people in history. And you have to think, you ever sit in your room and think, you think about a nation, I'm going to murder every last child. We don't think about this because we're Jews, so we don't even understand this. But do you know that right now, somewhere in the world, there's a few people sitting and thinking how every Jew can be killed, Rahman al-Islam. And unfortunately, it's more than a few people. Yeah, we look at it insanity, yeah? It's a mistake when we call it insanity. Because when we call it insanity, we don't take it seriously. Where's this coming from? Vayivez be'einav. He didn't bow down to you. Okay. So fight him. Kill him. Yeah, kill him with taxes. Don't give him shishi, as you say. Don't give him shishi. Fine. Don't invite him to the chasana. You're going to kill him and every single Jew. There's something in Haman, at the surface. This is the evil. This is the rishus of Haman. Mordechai is eating him up like crazy. He can't live if there's a Jew. Like we see in history. Adayay Mazah. With Stalin, with Hitler, with Arafat, with Sinvar, Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran, Yamach Shemam. All of them, they can't live if Jews are alive. Somehow, we don't know why, but it makes them crazy. Their biggest simcha in life is, to be able to murder a child, put him in a coffin, lock the coffin, and laugh. And it's like, wow, suddenly there's bliss in life. You were looking for simcha, everybody got simcha in Gaza. It's hard for anybody, a normal person, to understand this. Vayivez be'einav. So down here, the way it comes out in a manifested way, you're talking about evil, insane levels of evil. Where does even the taikev come from? Where does even the machshava come from? Where does a person even concoct such a dream? So this is the Medrash, is always Megala, the Pnimis. The Medrash says, Haman says, your Zayda, bow down to my Zayda. This is not Haman speaking, this is Haman's subconscious speaking. This is Haman's Shirish and Toyu that has such power. Why does it have such power? All because it comes from a higher source, but it fell down in Shviras HaKelim that fuels this craziness in the world. Mordechai knows all of this, so Mordechai doesn't surrender. First of all, Mordechai understands that bowing down to Haman is not going to help. Doesn't help. Haman has to be destroyed, not bow down. That's number one. You don't appease Haman. You can't appease him. On a deeper level, Mordechai knows, the whole tachlis of Toyu is for Kedusha. There's no such a thing, Toyu, outside of Kedusha. Yeah. But he knows the Toykif of that's why Mordechai says, Binyamin never bowed down to you. Binyamin never bowed down to you. So B'meila, Bozui ben Bozui, Lahaling Siba Yivez Esav Sapchere, V'kank Siba Yivez Ben V'yaksham Lashmas Yudem, Hainu Shas Siba Diva Yivez Einov, V'mitzazeh Vayivez Esav Sapchere. The reason Haman could do Vayivez here, it's only because Esav embarrassed the B'chayre. Hainu Shab B'chayre Shayeches LaEsav. V'ad Kedei Kach Balabayis Ala B'chayre L'schadet Ala L'machra. Esav says it belongs to me. I could sell it. It's my B'chayre. How do you sell B'chayre? What's that? It's a stupid. It's your birth. God. How do you sell you being a B'chayre? You hear the word. Because Vayivez Beinav is a B'chayre, that's Vayivez Haman. It's the same thing. You own your B'chayre. Shaita. Your whole B'chayre is part of God's plan to be able to be who you're supposed to be. It's part of your identity. The moment you replace source with yourself, the moment your craziness and insanity, which is all there in order to bring out your truth, the moment you think you own the B'chayre, this is where Vayivez Haman comes in. It's the same Vayivez. So the Medrash is really saying it's the source. They don't understand their power. They don't understand who they are. All the power that your challenges have is only to bring out the best in you. It's only to set you free. It's only to redeem you. It's to be Mila your Nefesh Elikis. The moment they think they're here to destroy your Nefesh Elikis, this is the Vayivez Esav Esabchayre, the B'chayre Balang Tzamir. I could sell it. I don't like it anymore. This is where the Shviras HaKelim happened to the point of complete disassociation. You took the Toyu and you completely disconnected. The bird, its friend says, you cannot dry the sea. So he's called a friend. Why? Because when you're talking about the source of Esav in Olam HaToyu, over there, Hashem calls him Chaveira, my friend. In a way, he's trying to help Esav. He said, you have to know who you are. You're my friend. Toyu and Tikkun are friends. Yaakov and Esav are twins. You come from the same mother. You came from the same source. You're friends. The moment you disassociate from that, you're done. You're finished. You're one team. If you really think you're a second team, you're going to destroy the first team. You destroyed yourself. Because Einoid Mulvadai. So calling him Chaveira is actually trying to tell him who he is. Let me tell you who you are. You were once my friend. Toyu comes from Elikus. You went through a breakdown. It's called Shviras HaKelim. You fell off a cliff. You have what's called amnesia, when somebody forgets. Dementia, Alzheimer's, amnesia, Sfagesim Vedabist. You forgot so much who you are that you think now you're playing God. You're not drawing out this sea. This sea is Kamayim Layam Mechasim. This is how it is. You're not going to destroy reality. To destroy the Jewish people, to destroy Torah is destroying reality. You're not going to get rid of God. You're not going to get rid of God's reality. It's not going to work. It says, En davar kazeh ba'olam. En davar kazeh. It's finished. Wherever there's God, there's going to be Torah. There's going to be the Jewish people, and the Jewish people are going to have Eretz Yisrael. Wherever it is, it's God. It's God's thing. It's not. I didn't make it up. This is how Jews need to speak to the world. They speak like this to the world. The Muslims will say, now I got it. Because in a funny way, they're crazy with religion, you see. They're ready to die and kill all their children for religion. Meshugana religion, but religion. And the Jews are afraid to even say the word religion. So you're not dealing with the same frequency. They're literally dealing with Toyu, religion, Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar. I wish all my kids blow themselves up and go straight to get 72 pies of pizza served by women. And the Jews are busy saying, we like democracy. We like democracy. Democracy is a Western term for two Americans who have a fight over a house in Manhattan, and you do 50-50. Democracy doesn't work. You don't go to Hitler, Berlin, 1945, and say, we love democracy. To speak to Hamas and Iran about democracy, understand this is like go to the jungle and tell the lion it's democracy.
Bibi went to the Lubavitch Rebbe so many times. Did she get a message?
No. He didn't. Somebody once told the Rebbe Rayatz, the Rebbe Rayatz had a daughter, one of his daughters. Her name was Mrs. Chana Garari, the Rashag's wife. So she once said, Tata, you always say, as Chassidus edelt ois mensch. Chassidus refines a person. And she said about a certain person, he says, look at his midas. Verdarbene midas. And he learns Chassidus. So the Rebbe Rayatz says, Ken sich vorstellen, wie wird ausgeguckt an Chassidus? Imagine what this guy's midas were before Chassidus. So imagine Bibi Netanyahu if he wouldn't have met the Rebbe. He met the Rebbe is noch epis da epis. But far, far from the courage that Jewish leaders need. Yeah, and people have Bechira, yeah. People have Bechira. Even Menachem Begin surrendered. Yesterday, the former chief of staff of the Israeli army said that there could be a war coming from Egypt any moment. And they have a trained army. Officially, there's a peace treaty with Egypt. The Rebbe told Begin it's a sheker. It's doing the stupidest thing in the world. It's going to be a b'chia l'doides, the peace treaty with Egypt. Nobody even talks about that, because Egypt at tzaddikim, they're the ones who allowed the whole Gaza to be built into Hamastan. It was all Egypt. This is the nation we have peace with. Yesterday, the chief of staff of Israel said, any moment there could be a war coming from Egypt, the peaceful neighbor. I'm just giving you an example. You know, you're dealing with serious stuff here, but it's all this nekuda. It's all this nekuda. Mordechai got it. He even understood the power of Haman. So b'meila, this is the Vayivez be'ein of Bazui ben Bazu. You're all Bazu. You don't get it, who you are, and therefore Mordechai is not going to change the narrative of existence because of Haman. Haman lost the plot. So Hashem calls him Chaveiroi because in the Shirish, Toyu is a Chaver. So now let's finish the last few lines. He says, Mamish finish in 3-4 minutes. V'toich en amayne shel Chaveiroi. Oh, ki zad tikun u Chaveiroi shel zad Toyu. Because Zah the midas, the 6 midas, Ze'er Ampin. Of Tikkun is really a friend of Ze'er Ampin of Toyu. Uklalos Olam HaToyu. Shari Zayin Yani midas. Uklalos Inyan Olam HaToyu Hu Zayin Melachin Sho Inyan HaMidas. In the source, Toyu and Tikkun are good friends. Zah of Kedusha is midas, 7 midas. Zah of Toyu is also 7 midas, but they're called 7 kings. The 7 kings at the end of Vayishlach, Vayimlach, Vayamas, the kings of Esav who died. That's Tayu, but it's also 7 midas. It's just much more intense, and it falls. But they're friends. So when Haman comes and says, the bird says, I'm going to destroy the whole nation. So his friend, which is midas of Atzilus, tells him, I also tried. V'ata Marta, and you think you're going to destroy them. And then he tells Haman, their heads will be uplifted and your head will be chopped off, you'll be hung. Even when the Jewish people blemished what's called Zav Atzilus, the midas of Atzilus, Hapoishim Bi, Kamashakasav Hapoishim Bi, they betrayed me, the Pasuk says in Yeshaya, Begufa de Malka Kavayachal, they blemished the body of the king. And that's why there was the request or the attempt to destroy them, because basically the core of reality, which is Zav Atzilus, because of the Shirish of Neshamas Yisrael is so powerful. So Hapoishim Bi, Kivayachal, they perforated the guf of the Melech like Titus when he stabbed the Paroiches. So as a result of that, reality, Hashem, Bikish Lashmidam, they can't live anymore. He said, I also couldn't. What's Pshat? Moshe stood up. כפי שמאיר אחד במרש בדיבר המסחל וייבז בין of תפריש כ"טס, ששמי גם המיימר המדרש רבן על משל Haman Rishia, a maimer from the Marash Tafresh Chavtes Vayivez, where he also brings this mashal of the a bird. Being in Yanishal Moshe Rabbeinu Shem Mahapech, we made it a lemiskel mechashechel in Hayr. Moshe, we know, transformed the bitter water into sweet water, darkness into light. Because Moshe goes to a place known as Atik, where there's no left side, where all the bitterness is transformed into light, because you see the source of it. The Pnimi is not the Chitzani is. This is the answer of the friend. Just like we explained before, Toyu has a certain role to play. The moment it goes out of that role, it defeats itself. So here too, the friend of Toyu, who's the friend of Toyu? In Kabbalah, Chassidus is called Zada Atzilus, the Midas of Atzilus. So he's speaking to Haman, the Shoirish of Haman in Toyu. And he says, I also thought I'm going to destroy them. Why did I think I'm going to destroy them? Because when the Chet HaEgel, the Jewish people affected even Zav Atzilus Kevayachal, meaning the darkness reached the deepest places. And therefore, as a result of that, they could not live. They cut themselves off from their whole chiyus. And it didn't work. Why? Because Moshe was Megala, the Pnimis, the Yidgil Midas HaRachamim, where ultimately even the deepest blemish doesn't blemish them at their core. And therefore they're not detached from their core. And therefore in that space, all the bitterness is transformed into sweetness. Just like we said, Toyu and Tikkun are part of a setup. But the moment you go to the core, it's very clear what's what. So with the Jewish people also, all their blemishes can happen on a certain level, on a certain frequency. Moshe Rabbeinu brought out in Parshas Kisisi, Yud Gimel Midas HaRachamim, that's higher than everything. And he said, if you erase them, erase me. And God said, okay. He was Megala that there's a Pnimius where there's no abandonment. The relationship is always there. Like in a person's life, all the darkness, it's all good, as long as it doesn't decide that there's no light left. The moment that happens, Zada Atzilus tells Haman, I also thought it's going to work that way. It's not like he's telling Haman, I also hate the Jews and I'm going to kill them. He's telling Haman, yeah, mitzvah the different systems, there could be all the darkness in the world. You want to kill them? Even Zav Atzilus said there's no source of life for them. V'nichrasa, you're cut off. And Moshe walked in and said, whoa. It's time to go to the superconscious. On the conscious level, they're cut off. On a superconscious level, they're not cut off. He says, this is even me. You are Rasha Merusha down here after Shviras HaKelim. You think you're going to kill them? Zada Atzilus couldn't accomplish that. You think Haman down here after Shviras HaKelim because your Shayrish isn't Toyu? And he's actually trying to help Haman. He's calling him Chaveira. Mitzad the Shayrish, he's Chaveira. Messiah b'Medrash, and now he finishes. Chayach, I swear to you, Reishach meturim chalaf Rishayim. Your head will go instead of their head. The inun l'shivza v'at litzliva. They will be saved, you will be hung. And the question is, why does the bird talk about this detail of the head and the hung? Roish dafka. We're talking about the head. Ki klal is atayne v'atoykev d'hamanu mitzad sharshi u'mekayre d'hainu roishay b'toyu shekadam l'tikon. V'al za'emrim l'shesh nedarga nailis yoyser shesham hu roisham. Sharsham u'mekayrem shal Yisrael u'mebchinezu hineni Mashiach ha'meirachayk. Haman's whole taina was the head. In the source, in my head, I'm higher than Yaakov. I'm higher than Mordechai. Esav is the b'chayr, the head. What happens to Esav's head at the end of his life? You remember? The Gemara says, Chushim, shuts off, and the head of Esav is buried where? Buried with Yitzchak. The body of Esav not. The head of Esav is with Yitzchak, because the head of Esav is the shirish of Esav. The shirish of Esav is actually very close to Yitzchak. Yitzchak loves Esav more than Yaakov, because Toyu has something so beautiful. So Haman says, the head, my head, I'm much higher. Gewaldige kasha. So on this, Hashem tells him, you're right. But let's talk about the Jewish head. The Jewish head, meaning the Shoirish of Yaakov of Yisrael, the Shoirish of David of Kedusha, is higher than Toyu. It's higher than Toyu and Tikkun. It's Shem Av. It's in Ein Sof itself. It's the Yud. It's higher than the Aleph. Even in the most distant place, even when I seem the most distant, even when Toyu is prevailing and you're so powerful, and I'm Rachak, Hineni Mashiach, there's no real distance. I'm going to go help Yaakov. Therefore, they're going to be saved. Lahatzalam mikol hagzeiris, to save them from all the decrees. Shall kol hakamim aleim, for all those who stand up against them. V'la Yehudim ha'isa oire v'simcha v'sasan v'ikar kein tiyeh lanu. Chayim. Der heißt, was tut sich? It says that Esav is buried in Be'itfa de Yitzchak, in Yitzchak's bosom, in Yitzchak's arms. Reisha de Esav Be'itfa de Yitzchak. It says you're not allowed to bury a tzaddik near a rasha, right? Halacha. So how can it be that Ada Yom Hazeh, Yitzchak and Esav are not just buried near each other, but he's in Yitzchak? The pshat is, the Alter Rebbe says, because the Rosh of Esav is not a rasha. Mitzad the mucker of Esav, he's a very holy boy. The problem of Esav is it wasn't integrated. He didn't know who he was. Vayivez be'enav esapchayra. He thought his head he owns. So therefore he completely was detached from his own source. But mitzad his rosh, he belongs to Yitzchak. That's why Yitzchak didn't give up on him. Yitzchak saw his kedusha. But Rivka understood that the only way that we're going to get the kedusha to Esav is if it goes through Yaakov. Because Toyu on its own, Esav has no connection. It has to come through Tikkun. That's the whole idea why Tikkun has to be Mevarer Toyu. Because Yaakov is the one who could ultimately help Esav find himself. It's like the Nefesh HaLekis needs to lift up the Nefesh HaBahamas. The Nefesh HaBahamas on its own is holy, but it doesn't know its holiness. It thinks it's a behemoth. So you need Yaakov to lift up Esav. That's why Rivka had the vision that it has to go through Yaakov. But mitzad Esav himself, mitzad his head, it's Kedusha. So that's why Haman was invoking the head. So the whole medrash is kafta v'ferach. It starts with Vayivez, Vayivez. From this comes the mashal with the bird. On this, the Chaver says, even I tried, it didn't work, because Moshe stopped it. Certainly you're not going to do it. Instead, your head, what you think is your head, ultimately is going to be destroyed, because the moment you're taking your head and you're using it to destroy the Jewish people, to destroy the MS, you're off. You're not part of the script anymore. You're finished, and that's it. It's over. Yeah. The moment you think you own your head, the moment you're replacing Hashem and you're replacing reality, and you think that evil has that power that it can really cancel out good, because that's what's happening and the world is smiling at you. Remember, Haman had good proof. Everybody was smiling. He had a Chashverosh in his left pocket. He thought he had Esther in his right pocket. He thought. He didn't know how Jewish, he didn't understand Esther. He had the whole world in his pocket. Everybody's bowing down to him. So you look at the world and you say, I guess I got it right. Yeah? Don't let it go to your head. Literally, this is it. Don't let it go to your head, because his head was very powerful.
The children were making fun of the head of Elisha, the prophet.
Yeah.
They made fun of
With the beers. Yeah, the beers of Elisha.
Right.
The 42, yeah.
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Huh?
I didn't mean to interrupt you, sorry.
It's fine.
From a personal level, if you think you identify with your trauma, or think you're a failure, or just a victim, then you lost it.
Yes. This on a personal level, it's very deep. Remember, the whole Maimah starts with Avodas, Nefesh HaLekis, Nefesh HaBahamas. The moment you start identifying with your Nefesh HaBahamas to the point that you think that its script is the ultimate story, then its whole tachlis is gone, and its futility emerges.
You have to identify with you.
As long as the Nefesh HaBahamas is it's a safe holder for your light, even if it's a process, we get that. And you have to respect that process. You can't just bypass Toyu and say you're nothing. That's not what he's doing. But when Haman is lahashmid larugul abedus kol Yehudim, now it's a different inyan. That's what the Zohar says when Toyu starts oppressing the Jewish people and wants to destroy them. Now the leech is already sucking out the blood. Now it's a death sentence. So in a person's life, we have failures, we have obstacles, we have challenges, and sometimes we have very, very deep, complex wounds that are very, very paralyzing. And you need to take them seriously to the extent that you need to work through them to find the light. But if you take them so seriously that they supplant more than necessary, then you become an anti-Semite. You understand? It's a delicate balance, right? because, we always have these two extremes, people who take their emotions very, very seriously and wallow in their wounds for a very, very long time, right? And other people who's like, just forget about it and stop taking yourself seriously and just be a normal person, just like your mother is normal and your father is normal, kivayachal, and everybody else in your life is normal, and you're the only meshugana in this world. So today to meshugana enough. And how many therapists are you going to go to? La'olam vod, you're going to go to your cave with a therapist. You're going to bury a therapist with you, so even in Olam Haba, you're going to have therapy. La'olam vod. Right, so you have these two conversations, and this one laughs from this one. This one says, everybody's narcissistic into therapy, and this one says, and you're just disassociated and brainwashed with your old models, and so on and so forth. But here we see the nekuda hamitis, the nekuda hapnimis. Esav is a hachana for Yaakov. Tik Tayu is a hachana for Tikkun. Like we learned in another Maimah, Yechuda Tata is a hachana for Yechuda Ilah. You need to work through Tayu. Don't make fun of Tayu. It's not you make fun of Tayu, you're depriving yourself from a big part of yourself. People who make fun of their Tayu, it's nothing. It's not nothing. Esav is not nothing. Haman is not nothing. They're energies that have a lot of intensity, and it's all in order to bring you to where you have to be. In that sense, take them very seriously. But the moment they want to rewrite the whole script of life and turn you into a shtickle, lost, despondent, ausgeklappte Heuscheine, yeah, viafatoiten bankes. The moment they want to turn you into a corpse, zoislai. So here you see that it's a beautiful balance, it's a beautiful dance. Of course you take Tayu seriously. But why do you take it seriously? Because it's part of the kavanah, because it's part of the tachlis. And the tzaddik will even say, I'm not going into Tayu right now. It's there's something there. It's not the time yet. Bayal para, like we learned before. But you also have to know, this is as long as Tayu remains in his orbit. The moment Haman goes crazy, lahashmed ladagol abed vayivez be'enov. Oh, now you own the b'chayra. Now you're finished. And now you have to know that. Now you're in Adkan. If the trauma wants to make a coup, and overthrow everything, and take over the entire system from the highest level of reality, we say, whoa. Shem Sag is a name, but it comes from Shem Av. It comes from Eid Saif. It's not you didn't make this world. You didn't make Olam HaTayu. God made Olam HaTayu. And He gave power to Olam HaTayu. Because it's representing something. It has a tafkid. Once the leech thinks that all the blood belongs to him, and he sucks out the blood and blood and blood, when a leech takes a little blood, it survives. But when the leech gets hungry, and it sees a big malava malchus, it's going to take all the blood, Hashem misachekes loy. Yeah, a few minutes later, the leech is dead. You're finished. That's the aluka. You're a piafke. But when suddenly the piafke thinks that everything belongs to it, now you're not just a piafke, now you think that God is a piafke, you're finished. And you see this also in history. You see when people went above the limit and their arrogance went everywhere, it was their death sentence. It's Atkan. There's always Atkan. Everybody have a beautiful and inspiring and meaningful day. Be'ezer Hashem, Shabbos we're here, and Monday morning we'll begin Bli Neder, another Purim Maimer. Okay. Was it? Yeah, I know. The leeches came back into style. No, it's a little bit. Acupuncturist needles, yeah. Needles. Nish piafkes, needles. Avada. When are you going today? Avada, especially for the letter. Avada. You going Sunday?
Yeah. Shabbos
for the Sheva Brachas, yeah. Zamid b'shah tova mitzlachas. Das heißt, the Meile, das was Toyu is Heche, wie Tikkun is mitzat Chitzayin, is nicht mitzat Pneumis. In dem Maimer, da sagt in the pecking order of things, Esav is born first. And it's something, it's not nothing. Esav is the B'chai. And that's why Yitzchak wants to bless Esav. He understands that in Esav there's special itis. The pecking order, there's a certain hierarchy. Like we said, the Nefesh Abamis has koiches that are very, very deep. And the Nefesh Elikis has to realize that. You have to recognize, but the reason is, there's a reason for it. It's because the itis of Tayu that Esav has, the moment the detachment becomes the God, the moment he wants to take over Pnimius, that then he doesn't know who he is. So that's what it is. Mitzat Chitzonius, Tayu is higher than Tikkun. What does that mean? That Tikkun has to work with Tayu, but when Tayu wants to destroy Tikkun, now the Pnimius comes out. You understand? As long as there's a relationship, so this is the pecking order. Yeah, it's like the food chain, the food web. You even have it in the Jewish people. You have Reshechem Shavtechem. Yeah, you have Chaytvi Etzechem Reshevechem. Yeah, you have G'dayli Adar, Tzadiki Adar, Talmid Chacham. What is that? It's the pecking order. But the moment the Talmid Chacham starts thinking he's God, you understand? He's a Gadol Hadar not because he serves God, but because he's a Gadol Hadar, then it's over. Then he lost the plot. Then he becomes dangerous. You understand? And he'll ultimately destroy himself. It happens in every situation. Yeah, a therapist, somebody comes to the therapist. The therapist is the mashpia, the client is the makabel, but that's bechitzonius. Bepnimius, we don't know who's the mashpia, who's the makabel. It could be the therapist needs exactly to deal with this struggle for himself. The moment he thinks he's the ultimate mashpia and you're the ultimate makabel, kaput. Chitzonius is just a setup, right? Sometimes children have higher than neshamas than their parents. Bechitzonius, you're the child, I'm the father. Bepnimius, it's nicht azay pashat. We don't know who's the child and who's the father. It's nicht azay pashat. You understand what I'm saying? So you honor the chitzonius. That's the structure God created. Tayu is higher than Tikkun. Esav is the B'chayr. But Bepnimius, it's not that way. Bepnimius, Tayu is not higher than Tikkun. Tayu is a hachana to Tikkun. Tayu is important for Tikkun. Tikkun needs Tayu. It's a necessity. And Tikkun needs to respect that necessity because he's going to gain from it. But once Tayu starts tampering with Pnimius, now the real Kavanah, the real Inyan, he really becomes disassociated from himself, then it's already a different matzav.